is perhaps difficult to believe that after the punishing 2004 hurricane season, that we would witness far worse in 2005. After a pleasant and relaxing lull in major hurricane landfalls, a lull that lasted for many decades, it now appears obvious that the United States and surrounding nations of the Atlantic Basin are under attack. Attack from vicious killers that we call hurricanes. Even as Florida and indeed much of the Southeast began to pick up, clean up, and dry out after the relentless onslaught of the hurricanes of 2004, Dr. William Gray and his team of hurricane season forecasters at Colorado State University were busy working on a preliminary forecast for the 2005 season. With the names Alex, Bonnie, Charlie, Francis, Gaston, Ivan, and Jean still fresh on our minds, it would not be too long that the forecast for the 05 season would begin to shed some light on how far down that list we might go. Only 1933 had 21 storms, but they weren't named back then. The 1995 season had 19 named storms, too shy of the record. What would the 2005 hurricane season have in store for Florida, or the Southeast? Would there be a repeat of the 4 big hurricanes to impact the Sunshine State?
Show them what the pressure is. As you can see there, pressure's down to 984. It's really loud outside.
We had all winter to wait and anticipate what might happen during the 05 season. But there were already clues as to what may lie ahead. Clues that would ultimately shape the future of not only the season, but also the nation. One of the biggest questions that we ask as hurricane trackers each season is, will there be an El Nino? Typically, an El Nino in the Pacific will limit the amount of hurricane activity in the Atlantic. There never was much of a chance of an El Nino being in place when the 2005 hurricane season began. The next big piece of the puzzle was water temperatures in the Atlantic. Overall, they were running well above normal, across most of the basin, with areas such as the Gulf of Mexico having sea surface temperatures running much above normal. Everyone also wanted to know about the infamous Bermuda High. Would it steer hurricanes into Florida again as it did so many times in 2004? Or would it be weaker and allow storms and hurricanes to turn away from the United States? We know now that most of our worst hurricanes this year formed relatively far to the west, and were trapped by the Bermuda High already. Thus, the Gulf of Mexico had a very high concentration of large, devastating hurricanes. And it all began right on cue, at the beginning of the season in June. The 2005 hurricane season wasted no time in getting started. In early June, the first tropical storm of the season, Arlene, formed near Honduras and moved northward, towards the north-central Gulf Coast.
Hi, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. It's about 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We're here in Navarre Beach, Florida, with the rain coming down, a little bit of wind. It's turning out not to be the very major event that we were preparing for, which is obviously really good news for folks along the northern Gulf Coast. You don't need another hurricane right now, and hopefully Arlene won't make it to hurricane strength before it makes landfall. The rain is coming down, it is a little breezy. Mike Watkins behind the camera, he and I are getting ready to take off. We're going to go over to Mobile Bay and see how the effects are over there. Obviously it's raining pretty good right here, and that's the main effect from Arlene. We'll get out and about, shoot some video of what's going on in the area, and we'll upload those to the website. Back in a very familiar location, we're in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Mike, if you'll pan up the beach, you can see the condominiums up there go all the way up to the side there. Look at that. This pipe here, they're trying to put back sand on the beach. The wind is picking up. The Gulf of Mexico is very angry today. It looks a lot like it looked on September the 15th when I was here for Hurricane Ivan, but it's not nearly as bad as you can imagine, with Arlene being only a tropical storm. There's a few people out here sightseeing. In this particular situation, it's not too dangerous, which is good. People are interested in the weather like this. Fortunately, Arlene is not as strong nearly as Hurricane Ivan was, and this is not as deadly a situation.
Even though Arlene was not a hurricane, its effects were dramatic because of the extremely vulnerable coast in the wake of Hurricane Ivan last year.
This is the West Beach area, just west of Gulf Shores, near the main pavilion that was so heavily damaged during Hurricane Ivan. Right over here is Highway 182. There's a Chevy Tahoe. We're hoping that the water does not get across the highway. That could be very bad. And right offshore this way, Tropical Storm Arlene. Uh-oh, here we go. Surge coming in here, buddy. Tropical Storm Arlene, the center of it is just offshore.
Think you're half here? Well, it's just a handle it for it. There's about $20,000 of sand under the sand.
The storm surge had no problem working its way underneath structures that were still reeling from Ivan's massive surge. With no protective dunes and relatively little beach in place to hold off the surge, even a strong tropical storm or minimal hurricane would have no trouble pushing the Gulf onshore.
Sudeth, HurricaneTrack.com, reporting to you in a dry Destin, Florida. The highest wind that we recorded on this mission was only 43 miles per hour, and we had an air pressure of about 994 millibars in the middle of Arlene in Pensacola, Florida.
Arlene was not much more than a reminder that indeed the hurricane season had begun. With one named storm and one landfall down, and it was only June, we began to wonder if this was a sign of things to come. At the end of June, Tropical Storm Brett formed and made landfall in Mexico. In early July, in the middle of the July 4th holiday, Tropical Storm Cindy developed in the Northwest Caribbean. It made landfall in Louisiana on July 6th and moved inland. Just a few days later, a record-breaking Hurricane Dennis would threaten some of the same areas that Ivan and Arlene did. The assault was on. By July the 6th, even as Tropical Storm Cindy was working its way inland over Mississippi, the global computer models were indicating a strong hurricane heading into the north central Gulf once again. I would work the Dennis mission with my good friend and colleague Jesse Bass. He and I set out from North Carolina on July the 7th, this time with a new steel wind tower and an assortment of remotely operated cameras to test out. It was early July and the heat was really cranking. We made our way west along Interstate 20 through areas like Madison, Georgia. I have been to this very gas station so many times over the last few years that it seems almost routine now. We kept an eye on computer models and track forecasts using our HerTrack software. So Jesse, it's 12:30 in the morning on July the 8th. What are we looking at with Dennis?
Well, the track continues to sort of come right in across Pensacola here. Hadn't changed much over the past few hours. And what we're seeing here is the forecasted track of Dennis coming ashore near Pensacola. And what we're going to do is animate this step by step here with a position, and you can see hurricane force winds extending out here in this blue circle, and then of course right here in the core are going to be the strongest winds near the center, and we can see it come in right across the coast. And the National Hurricane Center has it right at about 115 miles per hour right there at that point.
We finally arrived in Mobile, Alabama via I-65. After some much needed sleep, we then made our way east and south towards Gulf Shores, Alabama. As you may recall, I was in Gulf Shores for the landfall of Hurricane Ivan. Already the evacuation traffic was building up as people fled yet another potentially powerful hurricane. In Foley and Gulf Shores, we worked with the media some, as time was still very much on our side.
Another place to stay, like the police department, a jail cell is a good place for us.
It was very strange to be back where I had encountered such a powerful hurricane just last September. The memories were still vivid.
Hi, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, reporting to you from Gulf Shores, Alabama. You can see the beautiful sunset taking place in the background. However, there's a house there completely boarded up as Hurricane Dennis begins its trek off of Cuba and perhaps towards this area of Alabama. Although the official forecast track takes the center in near Pensacola, folks down here are certainly getting ready. We've been talking to people today. They say that people down here are physically and mentally tired of it, as you can imagine. I just wanted to show you that beautiful sunset over my shoulder there. It's really peaceful and quite nice down here in Gulf Shores today. That may change as Hurricane Dennis moves off of Cuba and perhaps towards this area. We'll certainly hope for the best for the people down here.
By the next morning, the forecast track had changed and Dennis was progged to pass very close to Gulf Shores in about 30 hours. We stopped at the Lowe's in Foley for a few supplies as we too prepared for yet another major hurricane event. It was still hard to imagine how brutal the storm surge was during Ivan at this location. I was also able to shoot some time-lapse video showing the convective activity over the mainland to our north. Jesse and I began to scout out locations to place the steel wind tower and remote cameras. We found a great location in Perdido Key, the local fire and rescue building, mostly new in the wake of Ivan just 10 months prior. We arranged with Lieutenant Lynn Garrett to utilize the parking lot as a location to place the tower if need be. We then made our way back to Foley.
Here we go again. Dennis has strengthened dramatically this afternoon. It certainly didn't take long after it moved off Cuba. Now it's back to a Category 3 hurricane with winds of 115 miles per hour and a pressure of 947 millibars as of the last recon flight. But it looks like it's going to get a lot stronger than that, unfortunately.
After some dinner in Foley, Jesse and I went back to Gulf Shores and made some adjustments to the tower.
Yeah, well, I'll have to talk to the editor about that.
Okay, fine.
The outer rain bands of Dennis were already beginning to move onshore.
Just got a new house. Currently it's on stilts, temporary footings in a field just north of here, so hopefully it's going to survive the storm well.
Where's your family?
My family went to Texas.
Excellent.
Went to Texas, got out of the area.
Wife and 3 kids?
Well, the 3 kids went there.
Gotcha.
Where did your house come from?
West Beach. Actually, the house survived Ivan.
Survived Ivan and was moved to its current location. Is that impressive?
You're on video, bro.
Live on the webcam.
People gonna be thinking, oh man, what?
I then began to test all of the remote cameras that we would hopefully place out on the worst that Dennis could throw at us.
All right, we're going to fire it up. We're going to test it. And I'm going to pull it up on the laptop, this camera.
So everything has to be within 90 feet of anything.
Bill Cowan and I went out to survey some possible areas along the beach to place some of the cameras. The media is always interested in our work.
Impacts this area.
It is important for me to point out that some of the first forecasts for Dennis showed it making landfall near Pensacola, as we know now actually happened. However, the forecasts closest to the day of landfall indicated that the center of Dennis would pass west of me, over the Mobile Bay. This is why I chose to remain in Gulf Shores, as it seemed almost a sure thing that they would experience the worst part of Dennis. Jesse had become quite sick with a summertime version of the flu. He was not feeling well at all, and I was worried about his condition. By sunrise on July 10th, Dennis had strengthened to a record 150 miles per hour, on a course for either Florida or Alabama. The police station began to evacuate.
Get your list as soon as I can.
Have you got in contact with him? You know if he's going to be, is he going to be willing to go? Because
Go ahead.
It was now time for me to head out and deploy the wind tower and the cameras. Jesse was too sick to work with me, and he went inland with most of the police force. Bill Cowan accompanied me to an empty Gulf Shores beachfront.
I'm standing here in an evacuated and an increasingly rainy and windy Gulf Shores, Alabama, where the brunt of Hurricane Dennis is likely to come ashore later today. I want to show you the Chevy Tahoe here, as you can see, is all set up and ready to go, but more importantly, we have the Hurricane Landfall Project wind tower sitting on the trailer, about to be deployed. It doesn't look like much now, but in just a little while, we will add the anemometer, the wind equipment, that's what that is, the storm cases, which house all of the cameras. Those will be placed on the tower, and we will hopefully be able to bring you extraordinary images as Hurricane Dennis closes in.
The storm surge was once again pounding Gulf Shores, right where I was just a month ago during Arlene, and of course, during Ivan. Remember, with no protective beach or dune system, it does not take much to overwash the area. By late in the morning, it was clear that Dennis was not sticking to the forecast track and was heading for a landfall near Pensacola. There was no way for me to get there in time, safely, so I used my location in Perdido Key to at least set up the tower for some observations. Let's face it, the effects where I was were not dramatic at all. The top wind recorded on the tower was only 54 miles per hour in a gust. I was simply on the weaker side of this hurricane. The wave action was tremendous. Where I was on the west side of the core, there was little wind, but the waves were quite impressive. Dennis made landfall near Pensacola and Santa Rosa Island. I was not in the core, but I did the best that I could considering that the hurricane made a track change in the last hours before landfall. The season was still young. There would be plenty of additional action to come.
Believe it or not, this is one of the anchors that was left after the Isuzu was placed here last year during Hurricane Ivan. We came back to this spot. We're here in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Hurricane Dennis rolled in over Santa Rosa Island earlier today. I was in Perdido Key. A lot of things came together today and worked very well, even though I was not in the core or the eye wall of Hurricane Dennis. A lot of technology worked and worked very well today. We did the streaming video, the new Hurricane Landfall Project tower, which is sitting on the Tahoe over there. That performed pretty nicely. Took me a little while to get it set up, but that's fine. In the future, we'll be able to do these things quicker and more efficient because we've had some of these dress rehearsals like Arlene and now Dennis, for example. And the season is still young. I think there's going to be a lot of activity to come, and we certainly know what that means. As August and September rolls in, it's going to be busier and busier.
Truckers standing by may even be rolling this way as we speak in order to get water, food, ice, get that all set up, because let's face it, we just got done with a Category 3 storm. There's going to be a lot of need throughout the entire area.
Jesse dealt with a major cold that kept him on the sidelines for the most part. I was happy with the initial results from the wind tower, but did not really get to use the remote cameras. We departed the Gulf and went back towards home. The damage to areas east of where I set up was significant. Even communities as far away as St. Marks, Florida had a destructive storm surge. Dennis affected some of the same locations that Ivan had, with similar results. It could have been worse, of course. Had Dennis made landfall across Mobile Bay, as forecast as late as the night before landfall, the destruction could have been enormous. As it was, Pensacola Beach, Navarre Beach, and many other locations all suffered extensive damage from Dennis. And onward the hurricane season marched. Dennis was followed